We all want to succeed in life, but the reality is most people never reach the level they dream of. Success isn't about luck, and it's not about talent alone. It's about choices, habits, and mindset. The truth is, failure isn't random. It follows a pattern, and when you can see that pattern, you can break it. Fear is the silent decision maker in so many people's lives, and they don't even realize how often it shapes the path they take. When someone is offered an opportunity, fear speaks louder than possibility. It tells them they're not ready, they might fail, they might be judged, they might embarrass themselves. And instead of moving forward, they listen to that voice and step back into what feels safe. Fear disguises itself as logic. It convinces people that staying comfortable is smart, that avoiding risk is wise, that waiting until they feel completely prepared is responsible. But what actually happens is years go by and they're still waiting for the right time that never comes. Most people fail in life because fear runs the show, and it runs it quietly in the background every single day. Think about how many dreams have been buried before they even had a chance to live. Not because someone wasn't capable, not because they didn't have talent, but because they let fear decide for them. Fear tells the student not to apply for the scholarship because others are smarter. Fear tells the employee not to speak up in a meeting because their idea might get shut down. Fear tells the person with a passion not to share it because people might laugh. And every time fear wins, confidence shrinks. What people don't realize is that fear isn't a signal to stop. It's a signal that you're moving in the right direction. If you feel fear, it usually means you're stepping into growth. The ones who succeed aren't the ones who never feel afraid, they're the ones who feel it and move anyway. Fear also has a way of rewriting the future before it even happens. People play the worst-case scenario in their heads on repeat, so much that they live through failure without even trying. They imagine rejection so vividly that they never risk the chance of success. Fear magnifies the small risks into giant ones. It makes a single mistake look like the end of the world. And when you give fear that much power, it steals every possibility before it even has a chance to show up. The other problem is fear doesn't just keep people from action, it becomes their identity. When you've been living with fear for so long, you start to believe you're just not the type of person who can take risks. You tell yourself stories like, I'm just not a leader, I'm just not confident, I'm just not good with people. But those aren't truths. Those are fears dressed up as facts. The truth is, anyone can develop courage, but courage only grows when you act in the presence of fear, not in the absence of it. Fear convinces people to trade long-term success for short-term comfort. Instead of starting the business, they scroll on their phone. Instead of speaking their mind, they stay silent. Instead of practicing the skill, they binge another show. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it comes with a cost. It costs growth, it costs opportunity, it costs the life you could have built. The successful understand that fear is temporary, but regret is permanent. And the painful thing about regret is it doesn't come from what you did, it comes from what you never tried. Fear also limits relationships. People hold back from telling the truth because they're scared of conflict. They don't ask for help because they're scared of looking weak. They don't set boundaries because they're scared of losing approval. And in the process, they shrink themselves smaller and smaller until they're living someone else's version of life. Fear not only keeps them from success, it keeps them from being authentic. When you let fear control you, it doesn't just stop you from failing, it stops you from living. Every great success story has fear in it, but the difference is the person didn't let fear make the final decision. Fear was there, but it wasn't the driver. Most people fail in life because they let fear take the wheel and steer them right back into comfort, right back into safety, right back into average. Consistency and discipline are the backbone of success, but most people underestimate their importance because they don't give quick results. People get excited at the start of a goal. They feel motivated, full of energy, and ready to take on anything. But motivation fades, and when it does, what's left is discipline. That's where most people fail. They confuse short bursts of effort with long-term commitment. They start something strong, but don't stick with it when it gets boring, repetitive, or difficult. Success doesn't come from what you do occasionally, it comes from what you do repeatedly, day after day, even when you don't feel like it. Most people fail in life not because they lack ability, but because they lack consistency. The truth is, discipline isn't glamorous. It looks like waking up earlier than you want, practicing when nobody is watching, putting in work when no one is clapping, and doing the small things right over and over again. But people chase excitement instead of discipline. They want shortcuts, hacks, and instant results. And when they don't see progress fast enough, they quit. They think success is supposed to be dramatic, but it's not. It's built in the quiet moments of discipline that nobody sees. Consistency is what transforms potential into results. Someone might have natural talent, intelligence, or great ideas, but without discipline, those gifts go nowhere. How many people do you know who start diets and quit within weeks, who join gyms but stop showing up after a month, who start projects with energy but never finish them? The pattern is everywhere. The reason is they want success without the discomfort of discipline. They want the reward without the repetition, and life doesn't work that way. Discipline is also about saying no. It's saying no to distractions, no to instant gratification, no to the easy way out. Most people fail because they keep saying yes to comfort and yes to excuses. They let their moods decide their actions. If they feel tired, they skip the work. If they feel discouraged, they stop. But discipline doesn't care how you feel in the moment. Discipline means doing what needs to be done regardless of emotions. Feelings are temporary, but discipline creates permanent results. Another reason consistency is hard is because the results are invisible at first. You can go to the gym for 2 weeks and see no change in the mirror. You can work on your craft for months and feel like no one notices. You can save money for a year and think it's still not enough. Most people quit in this invisible stage because they think their effort isn't working. But what they don't realize is that success compounds slowly, and only those who stay consistent long enough get to see the breakthrough. The people who make it are the ones who show up every day, even when the results are delayed, even when progress feels invisible, even when nobody believes in them yet. Consistency builds character. When you keep promises to yourself, you start to trust yourself. That trust builds confidence, and that confidence fuels more discipline. It's a cycle that only works if you don't break it. Most people fail because they break that cycle too early. They stop at the first setback, the first failure, the first sign that things aren't going smoothly. But discipline is about getting back up every single time, about showing up even when you fall, about refusing to let temporary setbacks become permanent excuses. Without consistency, effort is wasted. Starting and stopping keeps you stuck at the beginning forever. Success only comes to the ones who push through the boredom, the grind, the slow days, and the unseen effort. Most people fail in life because they never stay long enough on the path to see the results of their discipline. The people you surround yourself with shape your mindset, your habits, and ultimately your future. And this is one of the biggest reasons most people fail in life. We like to think that we make our own choices independently, but the truth is the environment around us has more influence than we admit. If you are surrounded by negative, small-minded, and unmotivated people, you will slowly start to reflect their mindset without even realizing it. Conversations become filled with complaints, excuses, and gossip, and over time, that becomes the language you speak and the thoughts you think. Success requires a supportive and driven environment, but most people stay around the wrong influences because it's comfortable. They don't want to break away from longtime friends or family who hold them back, so they shrink their own potential to fit in. The people closest to you act like mirrors. They reflect back what they believe is possible, and if their vision is limited, yours becomes limited too. Imagine trying to grow in an environment where everyone tells you that your goals are unrealistic, that success is for other people, that you should just be grateful for what you already have. Over time, even the strongest ambition begins to weaken under constant doubt. That's why most people fail, not because they lack talent, but because they keep choosing to stay in circles that don't believe in growth. Influence is contagious, whether it's positive or negative. If you're surrounded by people who are disciplined, ambitious, and encouraging, their energy pulls you forward. But if you're surrounded by people who are lazy, pessimistic, and unmotivated, their habits drag you down. Most people underestimate how much subtle influence matters. It's not always someone telling you directly not to chase your dreams. Sometimes it's the jokes they make about people who try, the eye rolls when you talk about your goals, the silence when you share your excitement. That quiet discouragement chips away at your belief. Over time, you start thinking smaller, playing safer, and expecting less out of yourself because you've absorbed the mindset of the people around you. And the problem is, it feels normal. It feels normal to think average when everyone around you thinks average too. That's why people often fail without realizing that the root cause isn't their ability, but their environment. It's also about accountability. When you're around people who push themselves, you feel challenged to do better. But when you're around people who accept mediocrity, there's no pressure to grow. If they skip commitments, you feel fine skipping too. If they procrastinate, you procrastinate too. Without realizing it, your standards lower to match the group you're in. People rarely rise above the expectations of their circle. That's why successful people are intentional about who they spend time with. They know that energy and ambition are transferable, and they protect themselves from influences that weaken their discipline. Most people, on the other hand, never take this step. They stay loyal to people who don't push them forward, and that loyalty ends up costing them their dreams. There's also the trap of comfort. The wrong influences make it easy to stay stuck because they don't challenge you to step out of your comfort zone. When everyone around you is content with average, it feels strange to aim higher. You start questioning yourself, wondering if maybe you're asking for too much, if maybe your dream is unrealistic. That self-doubt grows, and eventually you settle. You stop reaching because the people around you never reached either. And this is how entire groups stay stagnant together. No one challenges the cycle, so no one breaks free from it. The truth is, your circle is either your greatest asset or your greatest liability. It can inspire you to think bigger, act bolder, and chase harder, or it can hold you in a cage of excuses and limitations. Most people fail in life because they never choose to audit their environment. They don't realize that the wrong influences aren't just slowing them down, they're keeping them from ever even starting. One of the biggest reasons most people fail in life is because they avoid responsibility and look for someone else to blame whenever things don't go the way they want. Taking responsibility is uncomfortable. It means admitting you made a mistake. It means accepting that your effort wasn't enough. It means facing the truth that your choices led you to where you are. Most people don't want to face that reality, so instead they point fingers. They blame their circumstances, their family, their boss, their friends, the economy, even luck. Blame feels easier because it takes the weight off your shoulders. But what people don't realize is the moment you give away responsibility, you also give away your power to change. You cannot fix what you refuse to own, and this is why so many stay stuck in the same place year after year. When responsibility is avoided, excuses take over. You hear people say things like, I could be successful if I had more time, if I had more money, if I had better connections, if I had the right support. But those statements are just shields to protect themselves from accountability. Excuses may sound convincing in the moment, but they rob you of growth. When you choose blame, you might feel safe from judgment, but you also stay powerless to improve your situation. Responsibility is the price of freedom, and most people fail because they'd rather be comfortable in excuses than uncomfortable in growth. Taking responsibility also means accepting that your life is a result of your decisions, not just your circumstances. People are quick to say they can't succeed because of where they started, but history is full of stories of people who started with nothing and built something extraordinary. The difference is they chose to own their future instead of complaining about their past. Responsibility shifts the focus from what you can't control to what you can. Most people spend their lives pointing at doors that are closed instead of walking through the ones that are open. When you live in blame, you stay blind to opportunities because you're too busy looking backward instead of forward. Another danger of avoiding responsibility is it creates a victim mindset. When someone constantly believes life is happening to them, they stop believing they have the power to change it. They see every setback as proof that the world is against them. And once that mindset takes hold, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you're powerless, you act powerless. You stop trying, you stop pushing, you stop hoping, and eventually you accept failure as your identity. Responsibility, on the other hand, is what breaks that cycle because it forces you to admit that your actions matter, that your choices matter, that you are not powerless, you are capable. Avoiding responsibility also damages relationships. People who refuse to own their mistakes shift the blame onto others, and over time, that destroys trust. In workplaces, they point fingers at coworkers. In friendships, they deflect and deny. In families, they never admit when they're wrong. This constant blame pushes people away because no one wants to carry the weight of someone else's responsibility. Most people fail not only in their careers, but in their relationships because they lack the maturity to say, I was wrong, I could have done better, I'll fix it. Responsibility builds trust, and trust builds opportunity, but without it, doors keep closing. The truth is, responsibility feels heavy at first, but it's the kind of weight that builds strength. Every time you take ownership of a failure, you learn. Every time you admit a mistake, you grow. Every time you accept accountability, you gain the power to change the outcome next time. Responsibility is not a burden, it's a tool for success. But most people never use it because it demands honesty, humility, and effort, and those are things people often resist. They keep searching for external reasons to explain their situation when the real reason is within themselves. Most people fail in life because they avoid responsibility and blame others, never realizing that the very act of owning their life is what could have turned it around. Most people fail in life because they quit too soon. They underestimate how long success actually takes and how much persistence it demands. At the beginning of a goal, it's easy to be excited, full of energy, and ready to give everything you have. But the moment the results don't show up as quickly as you expect, doubt begins to creep in. You start questioning yourself, wondering if it's worth it, if you're even capable, if maybe you're wasting your time. And instead of pushing through that wall, most people turn back. They convince themselves it wasn't meant to be, when in reality, they just stopped too early. Success is almost always hiding on the other side of persistence, but because people give up, they never get to see it. The process of growth is never instant. Progress is slow, and sometimes it feels invisible. You can put in weeks, months, or even years of effort without seeing obvious change, but underneath the surface, something is happening. Every repetition, every failure, every attempt is building a foundation that one day pays off. The problem is, most people don't stick around long enough to experience that payoff. They want immediate results, and when they don't get them, they assume it's not working. They forget that success has a delay built into it. The seeds you plant don't grow overnight, but if you keep watering them, eventually they break through. Quitting too soon is like digging up the soil before the roots have had a chance to take hold. Another reason people quit early is because the struggle feels heavier than expected. When things get tough, the path feels unfair, and the effort feels endless. It's tempting to believe the pain isn't worth it, but struggle is part of the process. No one builds strength without resistance. No one builds resilience without challenge. Those difficult moments are shaping you into the kind of person who can handle the success you're chasing. The truth is, the pain isn't a signal to quit. It's a signal that you're on the right track. But instead of interpreting struggle as growth, most people interpret it as a sign to stop. And that's why they fail, because they don't push through the phase where transformation actually happens. Quitting too soon also comes from comparison. People look at others who seem to be winning faster, who seem to have reached success with less effort, and they start to feel behind. That comparison steals their patience and convinces them they're not making progress fast enough. What they forget is everyone has a different timeline, and comparing your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20 will only create discouragement. The ones who make it understand that their journey is unique and their only competition is with themselves. But when people keep comparing, they quit out of frustration instead of staying consistent until their own breakthrough arrives. Another danger of quitting too soon is that it becomes a habit. Once you quit one thing, it gets easier to quit the next, and eventually you train yourself to stop every time something feels uncomfortable. That cycle destroys confidence. Every time you quit, you teach yourself that you can't be trusted to follow through, and that belief sticks. On the other hand, every time you keep going despite the difficulty, you build proof that you are capable, and that confidence compounds. Most people never reach this point because they stop before they can experience the reward of persistence. Patience is rare in a world that promotes speed. We're taught to look for quick fixes, shortcuts, and instant results, but true success doesn't work on that timeline. The people who win are the ones who refuse to quit when everyone else does. They show up again and again through setbacks, through delays, through frustration, through failure. They don't just survive the hard seasons, they use them. Most people fail in life because they quit too soon, never realizing they were often one more try, one more step, one more day away from the very breakthrough they were waiting for,